So I wanted to reflect on something that I think matters to all of us, and it's very near to me because I have extended family and friends who are kind of swept up in this movement of, kind of the wake of what was then the president Trump. And I've been wrestling a lot about how do we connect with each other? How do we begin to knit ourselves back together as a country? Because we have always had divides, but I was reading some of the research from Rand, and it's never been this deeply polarly divided along these political lines. And I don't think that's healthy or good for any of us. I know sometimes, it's easier to think like, let's just go off our own direction and do our own thing because what we're doing is so important and right and true. And of course, I believe in that, but that's why I'm in this group. But I mean, in those values, but it's problematic, right? Because like the research has told us that when we have people who are in a group together, we kind of hold each other in tension. Um, and when that division separation occurs, we don't just stay where we are, we migrate further to our poles. We migrate further away from each other, which might work if we were just, off doing our own work or something. It doesn't work very well, I think, for communities, families, and a country. Um, so just a few thoughts I'm going to try to just quickly connect up, and then hopefully maybe there's time for a couple of people to respond. So what I want to say is, so I've been pondering this and I've been thinking about this and I've been trying to make connections with people like old friends and family, as I said, people that I know and some that I don't know, but we've gotten to know like through Facebook or something. And I wanted to start with this quote I found from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, one of his speeches on a visit to Cornell College. And it was, in the midst of wrestling with the divisions of his time, which aren't in many ways, unfortunately, so very different from the divisions of our time. And this was in 1962, October 15th, 1962. And as part of this speech, he said, I'm convinced that men hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. And they don't know each other because they don't communicate with each other. And they don't communicate with each other because they are separated from each other. So that was kind of a touchstone for me of, what's happening and how we begin to think about that, this separation and what that means to us in this country and in our communities in this country. And along those lines, also started reflecting on uh, a it was a piece I believe on NPR that I heard once about how this very conservative Jewish, I don't know if he was a rabbi or just a practitioner of I can't say it right. I will try. Chabad, and he intentionally, knowing who this person was, reached out to Derek Black, who was the son of Don Black, a senior member of the Ku Klux Klan, and the godson of David Duke, and he brought him into his Chabad group for food and for fellowship and for relation building, and and it was so effective that Derek Black left the whole KKK movement behind, and eventually became a speaker for, reluctantly, but a speaker for how we do this, how we connect to each other, we build relationship as a bridge out of these, racist and terrible things he was involved with. Which also then led me to an article that was that I came across from Scientific American, which was, let me see the author. It was called "The Shared Psychosis of Donald Trump and His Loyalists." Forensic psychiatrist Bandy X. Lee explains the outgoing president's pathological appeal and how to wean people from it. So I thought this was really helpful as well, because like you may have been thinking, I was thinking, okay, so what we really, what the thing is, people don't really have the facts, right? We know there's all this false reporting, false news. And so if we just lay the case out, if we lay the facts out for them, that, like in biblical terms, if you're from the Christian experience, like scales could fall from their eyes and they could see, and they would be like, wow, yeah, of course, that makes sense. But that isn't what happened when I did try to do that. And it isn't, by the way, what he recommends. So, or she, I don't actually know. So this is a just a little tiny thing from that says, it was a question: do you have any advice for people who do not support Trump but have supporters of him or many Trumps in their lives? And he says, part of the healing is removing the influence of Trump. So having him not be on social media and all that all the time and other media is helpful. But he says, I advise first not to confront his supporters' beliefs, for it will only rouse resistance. And that's another things I've read too. So despite our inclination, just like coming at it with the facts and just, pounding it away, like, come on, can't you see this, is not helpful. It just reinforces these beliefs and this perception. And he says, second, persuasion should not be the goal, but change of the circumstances that led to their faulty beliefs. So he has a section in here where he talks about the structural inequalities, the poverty and things in our country, which have made sort of a fertile ground for this to happen, which need to be addressed. And he does say, to try to be careful with your own mental health if you're doing this, because you can get bulldozed over, which I can totally understand. It really got to me at one point. Tried to reach some of my friends and family, but which led me then to another article, which was in the New York Times, how white evangelical Christians fused with Trump extremism. And it talked about that it says the subtitle, a potent mix of grievance and religious fervor has turbocharged the support among Trump loyalists, many of whom describe themselves as participants in a kind of holy war. So unfortunately, this kind of went hand in glove with this kind of apocalyptic view. We're in the end times, all these bad things are going to happen. And I've been very faith driven my whole life, but at one point I was much more conservative in my faith. And I was at a Christian college, and yeah, the more like people would just like get down on you, what we would say is, we're being persecuted for our faith, and so it fits into that narrative. So we have to be aware of these things as we're trying to reconnect ourselves as a people. I think is super important. And then finally, this I've thought about a lot, as kind of a mantra for me getting through this. But then I realized this is also part of the key, and this is in the New Testament, and it's in 1 John chapter 4, and it says that there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. And so what I wanted to say about that is, you know, and I wish Joe was with us because he could help from the psychological front. But I worked as an occupational therapist in mental health for a number of years, and in that role, we had people sometimes who would come in, including a patient we had once who had received a terminal diagnosis, but he was in complete denial about that. And I was very young, so I own my own shortcomings. At that point I was like, but we need to help him, so he can deal with this. And my inclination was we need him to stop being in denial so he can make good decisions, and talk to his family and whatever. But what the psychiatrist said is, defenses are there for a reason, and we don't, by the way, help if we try to blast through people's defenses, right? Like, that only makes people more defended. It only makes them more fearful. So, so what I want to suggest in kind of ending this little reflection, and then if there's time for a couple of responses, is that somehow we have to find ways to reconnect ourselves relationally, even as we're fixing the structural inequalities, which I think are huge, and the growing wealth gap in our country. But part of what, like that, I don't think that alone is going to do it. And we certainly, it seems clear from my readings, we're not going to do it by just trying to bash through people's defenses and or mock them or whatever inclination we have. Like, all those things, or call them out. Like, I read an article about call out culture versus call in culture. All those things may make us feel better, but they are very not likely to help us in our goal, if our goal is to knit ourselves back together in some way, meaningful way, in this country. So I think this love, this care, this way we connect to each other, that we can try to help each other feel like we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this together, and we're going to try to address these problems and make them better. And I'm going to hear what your things are, even if I can't agree with you at this moment. I still am going to try to hear, I'm going to try to understand, because in that way we make safe space that maybe then people will be able to lower their defenses. Maybe then people will be able to see and hear that we care for each other, that we're trying to build something together that will be for everyone's benefit. But it has to, I think, be done in that way of love, and not romantic love. This is like this biblical Greek agape love thing, where you love people like you care about them. You believe they have value, even if you don't like them particularly. It's still a love value. So that was my reflection, and where I've been struggling these days.